single worker output. That evening, while winding up his tape measure, the overseer announced that Dugaev would be given a single worker output task the following day. The foreman, standing nearby and asking the overseer to lend him 12 cubic meters until the day after tomorrow, suddenly fell silent and began gazing at the evening star twinkling over the crest of the hill. Baranov, Dugaev's partner, who had been helping the overseer to measure the done work, picked up a shovel and began cleaning out the already long cleared quarry. Dugaev was 23 years old, and everything he saw and heard here surprised him more than it frightened him. The brigade gathered for roll call, handed back the work tools, and returned to the barrack in an uneven line of prisoners. The hard day was over. In the canteen, Dugaev, without sitting down, drank a portion of thin, cold grain soup over the side of a bowl. The bread issued that morning was for the entire day and had long since been eaten. He wanted a smoke. He looked around, wondering who he could borrow a cigarette from. On the windowsill, Baranov was collecting shreds of makhorka from an inside-out tobacco pouch on a piece of paper. Having carefully collected them, Baranov rolled a thin cigarette and handed it to Dugaev. "Take it, smoke, leave some for me," he suggested. Dugaev was surprised. He and Baranov were not friends. However, no friendship is formed in hunger, cold, and sleeplessness, and Dugaev, despite his youth, understood the falsity of the proverb about friendship being tested by misfortune and adversity. For friendship to be true, its solid foundation must be set before conditions and life have reached the final limit, beyond which there is nothing human in a person, but only mistrust, malice, and lies. Dugaev remembered the northern proverb well. The 3 prison commandments: don't trust or believe, don't fear, and don't beg. Dugaev greedily inhaled the sweet tobacco smoke, and his head spun. "I'm getting weaker," he said. Baranov remained silent. Dugaev returned to the barrack, laid down, and closed his eyes. He hadn't been sleeping well lately. Hunger kept him from getting a good night's rest. The dreams were particularly torturous: loaves of bread, steaming greasy soups. Oblivion was slow in coming, but half an hour before rise, Dugaev finally opened his eyes. The brigade arrived for work. Everyone went to their working places and quarries. "And you wait," the foreman said to Dugaev. "The overseer will set you." Dugaev sat down on the ground. He had already become so tired that he was completely indifferent to any change in his fate. The first wheelbarrows rattled down the narrow ramps, and shovels scraped the stone. "Come here," the overseer said to Dugaev. "Here's your spot." He measured the surface volume and made a mark. "A piece of quartz. Up to here," he said. "The ramp man will pull your board to the main ramp. Have to carry ore to the place where others do. Here are your shovel, pickaxe, crowbar, and wheelbarrow. Get down to work." Dugaev obediently began working. Even better, he thought. None of his comrades would grumble about his poor walk. The former farmers were not obligated to understand or know that Dugaev was a newcomer, that he'd gone straight from school to university and traded his university days for this quarry. Everyone for himself. They were not obligated. They shouldn't understand that he was long since exhausted and hungry, that he could not steal. The ability to steal is the cardinal northern virtue in all its forms, from a comrade's bread to presentations of 1,000-ruble bonuses to bosses for inexistent fake achievements. No one cared that Dugaev couldn't endure a 16-hour workday. Dugaev pushed the wheelbarrow, picked and poured stones, carried again, picked and poured again. After the lunch break, the overseer came, looked at Dugaev's work, and left silently. Dugaev was picking and pouring again. The quartz marker was still a long way off. Then the overseer came again and unwound the tape measure. He measured and counted Dugaev's output. 25% of a norm quota, he said, looking at Dugaev. 25%! Do you hear that? I hear you, Dugaev said. He was surprised by that result. The work was so hard, so little stone was being picked up by the shovel. So heavy was the picking. The result, 25% of a norm, seemed very high to Dugaev. His calves ached, and the strain of pushing the wheelbarrow caused unbearable pain in his arms, shoulders, and head. The feeling of hunger had long since left him. Dugaev ate because he saw others eating. Something told him he needed to eat, but he didn't want to. "Well then," said the overseer, leaving, "best wishes." That evening, Dugaev was called up to the investigator. He answered 4 questions: first name, last name, article, sentence term. 4 questions that prisoners are asked 30 times a day. Then Dugaev went to bed. The next day, he worked again with the brigade, with Baranov. And on the night of the day after, soldiers with rifles led him behind the horse driver's base and along a forest path to the place where, almost blocking a small ravine, stood a high fence topped with barbed wire, from behind which the distant clatter of tractors could be heard at night. And realizing what the matter was, Dugaev regretted that he had worked in vain, that he had suffered in vain this last day.